What is your reaction to that debt that the president has?
Well, I mean, Lawrence, this is why the American people deserve to have a full accounting of the financial interest, including the indebtedness of the president of the United States. And I do share in that concern. Who does he owe the money to? Tell us, who do you owe the money to? And do you owe debt to any foreign nation? Do you owe debt? Do you owe money? Let's just be clear about what debt means. You owe somebody money. Do you owe anybody money who is impacted by any decision you make as president of the United States?
This president appears to have over $400 million in debt, 420, whatever it is, $million in debt. To whom? Different countries? What is the leverage they have? So for me, this is a national security question.
Massive report published yesterday by the New York Times sheds a lot of light on Donald Trump's tax practices over more than 2 decades. It also leaves a lot of questions unanswered. As Speaker Nancy Pelosi laid out earlier today, one of the most important ones is what it means for the country and our national security if the president has hundreds of millions of dollars in debt coming due within 4 years. To help us break all this down, I want to bring in someone who worked at the highest levels of American national security, Susan Rice, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, former national security advisor to President Barack Obama. I think that when we think about the debt here, it's worthwhile thinking about. I've seen a lot of people talk about their security clearance processes. There's sort of 2 questions. One, who he owes the debt to, and we do know a bunch of that is personally guaranteed to folks like Deutsche Bank and others. But the debt itself as a lever for mischief from entities that have some interest in the United States is something that anyone who goes through security clearance has to deal with, right?
Absolutely, Chris. One of the most important things that the FBI and the background checks look into is, are you potentially beholden to anybody or any entity, any country that could use that leverage against the interests of the United States and our national security in order to extort or exploit or otherwise manipulate you? And debt, indebtedness, is one of those very serious things that causes alarms to go off. And in this case, with over $400 million owed to God knows who, in what countries around the world, when we know from Donald Trump's own children that they have said publicly in the past that many of the loans and money they've gotten have come from Russia. That might begin to start to explain all of the crazy behavior we've seen out of Donald Trump over the last 4+ years. It is very much a national security concern from a security clearance point of view, but also, as you heard Senator Harris say, for the reason that we don't know who has leverage over him.
You mentioned Russia, and it's always struck me that even before we got the sort of amazing reporting by the New York Times, the president has been very public about the Saudis, particularly. His children have talked about the Russian. These are two countries that have a lot of people with a lot of money, that have a lot of liquid assets they're trying to park in other places and sometimes launder. And that the president has said, I love the Saudis. They buy lots of toys from Trump. What am I going to do? Treat them poorly? And also 2 countries the president has bent over backwards as president of the United States to make nice to, even, essentially saving Mohammed bin Salman when he had an American newspaper columnist murdered.
Yes, this is very concerning. I mean, Donald Trump's friends, the people that he loves and lauds and protects around the world, are some of the most odious leaders and dictators that one can find. And what we now know is that he has got debt to the Philippines, where the dictator Duterte is in charge. He's got debt to Turkey. He's got debt to a number of places, and many of which we may not know of. And his embrace of Mohammed bin Salman for all of his human rights abuses, for all of his nefarious behaviors, and in particular for his culpability in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, an American resident. And then for Donald Trump to brag, as he did to Bob Woodward, about how he got him off scot-free is really extraordinary. There's nothing about that that serves America's national interests or our values. So you have to wonder, why is Donald Trump so beholden to Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudis, and Vladimir Putin, and so many others?